Morning. Hey, everybody. Good morning. We're almost ready to go live. Just a few more minutes before we're joined by our other platforms as we bring you the urgency. It's just crazy. Some crazy stuff that's going on. So we have a lot to talk about this morning. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Down to Earth with Harriet Kimmick. Thank you so much for joining us. It's Thursday and it is October 10th. I'm having a little trouble with that, I must confess, because I cannot believe it's the 10th of October. I mean, just a few days ago, I thought it was the 1st. So I found myself writing the date this morning. And I was pretty sure it was the 8th of October. Much to my chagrin, I discovered that it is actually October 10th. And I was like, no way could it be the 10th of October? October just started. So where did the days go? I mean, we're sliding into Halloween. So we're sliding into Halloween. It's my favorite time of the year. I love Halloween, like love, love, love Halloween. I mean, the lawn wars have started all over suburbia. And yeah, I'm not going to say anything because I do have my decorations out myself and it's getting spooky. So I think I still have some more spookiness to put out. I haven't quite done the scarecrow thing, but I think I'm headed there. I mean, it's interesting to see how people go all out on fall decorations and all out on Halloween decorations. I just love it. I just think Halloween is so cool, right? So if anybody were to ask, what are you going to dress up for as Halloween? I don't know. I haven't gone that far. I haven't thought about it that much. I think one of my daughters says she's going to dress up like a witch. Another one says she's going to do something else creepy. But I do know that anything else we'll be doing, we'll be watching. One of the things we do during Halloween is watch scary movies. Yeah, all month long, right? So I don't know why I haven't started yet because maybe I don't want to be scared. I don't know. The news is scary enough, so probably don't want to need any more scariness, right? Right? Um uh so uh so we are talking today about yesterday we had quite the discussion on the former colleague who works with Matt Lauer. Matt Lauer is a former NBC anchor. She's now accusing him of a rape that took place in Russia in 2014. Problem with that, of course, is that it took place out of the country and there was no record of it. So it kind of comes down to her word. He says, she says, but also that later on, when they returned to the States, she initiated sexual contact with him. I don't think Matt Lauer is anymore married. I think his marriage was pretty much shot after that, right? Because, when those things become public, you, the wife, you're standing on the sidelines looking stupid. You feel stupid. You feel run over like a Mack truck. You feel humiliated. Feel as if everything was your fault, even though you have to recognize that the individual you married had these issues existing and these issues pre-existed before the marriage. But still, there is still it does affect you, the person, whether you know it or not. I mean, in the initial shock, because you ask yourself, why did you do this? Why couldn't you control yourself, or so on? There are all kinds of questions that we ask ourselves. So I just put it down to, you can't control anybody and people have their issues that you have no control over. So which leads me into what we're going to talk about today. The fact that, and this story had nothing to do with the Matt Lauer story. The story actually came out before the Matt Lauer story with the new book and blah, blah, blah. This story came out a couple of days ago. And I thought when I was reading it that I thought it was something on The Onion. You know of The Onion? Yeah? The Onion, who makes spoofs of stories, and sometimes you think it's real. That's what I thought this story was. This story was first circulated, and it talks about a man who is the groom in the wedding. He raped the bridesmaid, one of the bridesmaids, before the wedding, the night before the wedding. and he still got married anyway. The bride knew of the incident, and she still married him the next day. That took place back in May. But now, uh but now what happens now is that, guess what? He's now possibly facing charges. He's still married. The woman still married him. So my question is, should he have gotten married? Should the woman still have married him? Now, we've been talking about this from both sides of the coin, and I'm going to go into it in just a little bit, because I think there is a credible story here to be made about drunkenness and responsibility. And this seems to be a revolving theme, because it seems to me that when women become drunk, that people take advantage of them. And so I have to ask the question, is it worth getting drunk? Is it worth getting so stone cold drunk that you are completely out of it and you can't help yourself? You don't know where you are. This is a running theme, it seems like, doesn't it? Because the young woman, the bridesmaid in this story, I think there's a whole other story behind this. You know what I mean? The bridesmaid in the story, she says that she got, you want to hear this? She says that she got so drunk she didn't know where she was. So the bride to be asked the groom to help her walk to her car. And the groom walked her to the car, but he passed by the locker room and he took her. The surveillance footage shows that both he and her walked into the locker room. Then the bride walked in, and when the bride caught him having sex with her, they had a fight. But she still married him. A smart girl. I agree with her. Because according to text messages, the groom is now facing possible charges of rape. According to text messages, the groom asked the bridesmaid to make sure she takes the plan B the next morning. That means he didn't use a condom. So she could have gotten pregnant. Obviously, she didn't get pregnant. So what the bride did, the bride decided that she was going to marry him so this girl does not come back and accuse him of, having a baby. And so she now would have to face, you know, face child support charges. Obviously, she didn't get pregnant because there's no baby 9 months, almost 9 months later. But still, the question is, why did the bride still go ahead and marry him? Why wouldn't she? Because you don't know what maybe the bride was looking at it from a different point of view. Maybe she was looking at it from the point of view that maybe this girl probably wanted her guy, and this was a way of getting, because she's not sure if the sexual contact she saw was consensual or was it forcible. Now the girl is saying that it was forcible. They, in fact, had called the police and so on. So she's saying that it was forcible rape. It was rape, so it was forced. But maybe the bride at the time, having gone through all this effort to plan a wedding and so on, she's like, whatever, I'm still going to marry him because I don't know what's going to happen out of this. Maybe he has to marry the girl and I'm not going to look like the fool. Right? So there, he's now married, but he's possible facing jail time, which kind of strengthens the bride's perceived understanding a little bit, because sometimes when a woman can't get the man, you know what they do, right? They'll scream rape because they didn't get what they wanted out of it, because nowadays people have transactional relationships. Now, that is no way excusing what he did. No, it's not excusing what he did, but it's also not excusing her behavior either, because why were you so stone cold drunk? And this is the question that I've been asking everybody since yesterday. Why are you so drunk that you don't know where you are? Why do we continue to place ourselves in danger? We already live in situations that compromise our safety. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it seems to me that nobody's paying any attention to the fact that young women continue to place themselves in danger. You know what I mean? The argument can be said, oh, we should live in a society that is so perfect that nobody will ever rape anybody. Well, good luck with that. That is never going to happen. Never happened before, and it's not going to happen. We have created enough awareness of why rape shouldn't happen, and so on and so on. But ladies, women continue to place ourselves in abject danger. You cannot go out and be with other people and be so drunk that you don't know where you are. I'm never going to agree with that. I think the time has come for us to be more, and yes, I advocate for women's rights, but you also have a responsibility to yourself, to the community, and to your parents and your family members. And more importantly, to your future self, who later on is going to ask you the question, could you have done something to prevent it? And you want to be make sure that you're able to say, I was raped because someone else decided they wanted power over me. Not that I was raped, because I placed myself in danger where I was so drunk I didn't know where I was. And I know many of you are like, but come on, Harriet, when you're young, that's what you do. And come on, Harriet, that's when people get raped, right? We've all been young. I was young too. I've told you my story, how one time when I was 21, I drank, I had drinks and I didn't remember how I got to my boyfriend's house. Never happened to me again because I made sure it never happened again, right? Because I could not understand. When I woke up the next morning, I was not happy with myself that I was so out of control, that I lost control of myself, that I didn't know where I was, and someone else had to assume control over my safety. Didn't sit well with me. So I made sure it never happened again. It never happened again. I never did drugs, because not because I'm a prude, but because I didn't think drugs were good for me. I didn't think drugs were good for my body. I thought drugs were acidic and would make my body sick. Never did drugs. Never drank, because I think alcohol tastes like medicine. That's how it tastes to me. I don't see anything fun about drinking vodka and gin and schnapps and stuff like that. I used to enjoy an occasional glass of German wine. I like medium wine. So I used to enjoy an occasional glass of red wine with dinner. But then when it started to give me that buzzy feeling in my head, and it reminded me of the time when I lost control of myself, I was like, oh, okay. Half a glass and I'm good. Right. But it makes me, because I felt that my safety could have been compromised had I not been around a group of people whom I trusted. I knew from experience back then there are people whom you couldn't trust, and that people like to touch girls when they think you are unaware. So I had just come out of a beauty pageant, and I had heard the stories of other girls who had been touched inappropriately because they were unable to, keep themselves together. It was not going to happen to me. Right. So I made sure it never happened to me after that. I was never so drunk. So I was never so drunk. I was never drunk, period. And I could never have placed myself in such a situation. So I know that it is not popular, especially in some settings and in some spaces. Yeah. In some spaces where people of other ethnicities, perhaps the conversation needs to be enlarged. Perhaps the conversation that happens in those spaces is they tell their children, you're young, sow your wild oats, be wild, because when later on when you get married, you can't do anything. Right. And then people still have multiple divorces after that, because you still get married and you still get drunk while you have friends over or while you have your neighbors over, and stuff still happens. So that's not the issue. The issue is, do not lose control of yourself. If we don't have this conversation about how we drink and about what our behavior happens after we drink, then we're going to continue to have people driving drunk who kill innocent people, kill innocent children, kill innocent families, right? And destroy people's lives because you drink irresponsibly. It is irresponsible to drink and not be in control of yourself so that you don't know where you are. And I think in these two scenarios, that's what it is. Is it a moral question? It becomes criminal if you carry out a criminal act, which is what happened with the groom. Yeah, he raped the woman. Now, after she did call rape. Because the police came, they came and reported it, because she said she was too drunk to have supplied consent. And that's key, guys. You need to remember that. You need to get, yes, I would suggest for all of you guys, if you're going to engage with anybody, I suggest you get a text message. Because then you have proof that they said yes. Okay? Because she said she was too drunk to say yes. And so he took advantage of her. He might have, I believe that he might have wanted to have sex with her prior to, but the situation never arose. And then now she's drunk. He probably thought she would be too drunk to remember what happened the next day. So he took advantage of her. For that, he should pay, right? But guys, under normal circumstances, like in the story of Matt Lauer, he invited the woman, she's a colleague, and he invited her to his hotel room, and she came, and he had penetrative anal sex with her. She said she was crying, but when they got back to the States, they continued, she initiated sexual contact with him. So that kind of clouded the issue that maybe it wasn't rape back in Russia. Is it, or wasn't it? You never want to put yourself in a position where you don't know if it's rape or if it's not. It has to be clear cut. Yes, I want to be in bed with you. Yes, videotape it, secure it. If I had a son, that's what I would be telling him. If I had a son who was unmarried right now and who was engaging in sex, I would tell him, get it in writing. So nobody 10 years from now can't go back and say and keep a screenshot in your iCloud account so that 10 years from now when you're running for office, they can't come back and scream that you raped them and you didn't get consent. You have the screenshot to say this happened on such and such a day on such and such a time. Do you see where we're going with this? This is now speaking to our own moral code as a society. It's becoming a bigger issue because it seems to me there are there are some women who use this as a tool to get back at men, and it clouds the issue because where rape really occurs, we don't know because the real victims won't ever come forward. Somebody else is listening to this, and she was raped. She's not going to come forward because she's going to think that we're all going to make fun of her and we're all going to say it's he say, she say. Meanwhile, she's the real victim who has been traumatized and is going to endure mental and emotional trauma for the rest of her life. She'll never go to a counselor to admit she was raped. She's not going to talk about it, right? Because the personification and the conversation around it centers around making it seem like it's her fault, right? Even me right now, it might even sound like that. I'm just going to be real with you. But I am just saying, don't get so stone cold drunk. Don't go hanging out and you get drunk and you have to walk out of the bar and somebody has to help you to put you behind the wheel. Don't do that. You're compromising your safety, not just sexual safety, but your own personal safety. Someone could kidnap you, someone could hurt you, right? Don't do that. And at the same time, even with you, when you're with a group of young men or men whom you trust, you just never know. Can I just be honest with you? Let me just tell you something real quick. I told you about the time when I was 21 and I got drunk and I was hanging out with my boyfriend and his friends, right? Well, this is real life and these things happen. I was at the time, he had a friend who had a kind of crush on me, would you say? Kind of a misguided, kind of a crush. But it's one of those things where my boyfriend knew, I knew, and his wife knew, and everybody thought it was funny or not funny, but nobody was really going into paying it. So we got invited to a house party that took place on somebody's beach house. And I saw my boyfriend and I were supposed to meet there, and I saw my boyfriend's car. And to get to the car where his car was parked, I didn't know that it was the guy, his friend who had driven the car, that he hadn't arrived there yet. So I'm walking to the car, and here comes the friend. He grabs me, he forces me onto the car, and he begins to kiss me and caress me. No matter, he was a strong guy, he's tall and broad and so on. So I'm pushing him off, right? I'm pushing him away, and nothing I could do could get him to stop. That is what is considered sexual assault. He didn't rape me, but he was all over you, right? And I finally screamed for him to stop. And must have screamed loudly enough that it stopped him, and he thought maybe someone would hear. Do you know what his excuse was? He said he was drunk. He said, if you tell my boyfriend, he said, I'm going to say that I was drunk. I still told my boyfriend. what happens is after that, he never hung out with us again. He was never around us. I never hung out with him. I never hung out with him again because I felt somehow compromised. Do you see what I'm saying? Did I place myself in danger? No, I wasn't drunk. I wasn't drinking. I was walking to what I thought to my boyfriend's car, thinking my boyfriend was in the car, but it was being driven by his friend who took advantage of me and then conveniently blamed the liquor. Just like this groom in Pennsylvania. He's saying he was inebriated. They were all drinking together and stuff happens. No, stuff does not happen. We need to caution our young people, our sons or daughters or nephews or nieces. We need to caution them on what is acceptable behavior sexually at all times. We need to tell them how to avoid a rape charge. Seriously. We also need to tell girls how to avoid being sexually molested and how to avoid being raped. We need to teach our children about the sexual dangers that exist, that there are predators. Now, looking back at it, I can now say that my boyfriend's friend, he was his best friend at the time, was a predator. Apparently, he had just been perhaps waiting for an opportunity, and that was the opportunity that presented himself for him to have his way with me. Do you see my body language? Do you see how I'm remembering it? So I'm talking about it as if it's third person. It's a real experience that happened to me, and immediately I started covering myself. This is what happens to women when we are raped. This is how we feel. We feel compromised, we feel exposed, and we feel naked. The fact that I even have to tell you about it is something that I'm going to have to think about when the show is over. That's what it feels like. And what I did in the future after that was what? I don't walk in places. If I'm waiting on my guy to show up, I wait for him to show up in the light. If he's not coming, I don't go to someone's house to wait for him. I'm not around because I told my boyfriend, do not. I kid you not, folks. I kid you not. Right? Can you believe that? I told him, don't let your friend come near me. Right? And so I'm saying that with all brevity, and hopefully this will help someone else, because I want to be clear that these things do happen, and they're not. It's not convenient. Um, it's not convenient. Uh, it's not convenient because you wanna be able to say that you want to be able to say that you these things happen. I wish I could tell you that that never happened. Later on, when I got married, my ex-husband had a best friend who had the same dilemma. These things happen to women. Like I told you yesterday, go and ask your female friends, your ex-girlfriends, your current girlfriend, your wife, lover, your friend who is a girl, your daughters. You might find yourself roughing it up with a gun there for a minute. Your daughters, your nieces, your cousins. If you go and ask the women around you if they have ever been sexually assaulted or compromised in any way, you are going to be shocked. You're not going to believe what happens. Have you guys done that? Have you gone and done that yet? It's mind blowing, right? Because after I got married, no, my ex-husband, I've told you about him. He was a horrible monster, right? But he had friends who were very touchy-feely, right? So because of my prior experience, I was the one who sat like this. I didn't allow myself to be alone with any of them. And in fact, my ex-husband had told me that he only trusted 3 of them. The rest of them, he's like, I don't know. One of them thought he was getting his way. I slapped him away. But there was another one who told me he had been in love with me from my husband's best friend, my ex-husband's best friend. Told me he had been in love with me and tried to touch me inappropriately when we were visiting him in New York. Ew. This is the crazy stuff that women go through. If you were to ask your wife, your girlfriend, if your best friend has ever touched her, you might not want to know the answer. You might never want to know, because the truth is, she probably is not going to say so because she wants to preserve the friendship, but she might tell you. Because if I had told my ex husband about his best friend, it would have ruined over 30 years of friendship at the time. You see what I'm saying? It's amazing. And this is the culture that we live in, where I know some of you are saying, wow, because this is the culture we live in, where a, a woman feels like our bodies are supposed to be ours, but for some reason, it seems like I don't have any control over my body, or I don't have free agency over my body. If some guy feels like he should talk to me or touch me, then suddenly he has rights to my body. And I haven't given him the right to. The last time I checked, I had to say yes in order to give someone the right to touch my body, right? But you would think that that is normal. It's not. You'd be amazed how many women would confess to being groped by a male colleague at home. Matter of fact, all you guys who are married, just ask your wives if their boss or their male colleague ever touched them. Just ask. Just for fun, just ask. You're gonna know the answer because of how she answers you. You're gonna look in her face and you're gonna know. And the reason I'm asking you to do it is so that you are aware that this happens to women. Because oftentimes what we do is we project onto the victim and we say it's her fault. Like in my story, when I was young, so was it my fault that I was young, that my boyfriend's best friend thought he should be touching me all over? No, as a matter of fact, it caused a fissure between the group of friends because people were like, how could you do that? You know what I mean? Some guys were like, "What? Why would you do that?" Right? I'm laughing at the memory of it because it was mind blowing. It's crazy the things that happen, and more often than not, these stories are, if you start the conversation and you start asking other women, the women around you, for what happens, you're going to be shocked. You're going to be amazed at what happens. This is down to earth. This is just a down to earth conversation I'm having. My name is Harriet Kimmick. Thank you so much for joining with me, because this is such a conversation that must happen, that we need to have, all of us, whether you're going to ask her across the dinner table or you're going to ask her when you're comfy or when you're cozy, but ask anyhow. And you'd be surprised how many women will tell you when they go into their boss's office that he touches them inappropriately. Some years ago, a guy told me that he was he's a mortician, as many funerals as he has done. He can tell you about all the pastors in town and the scandals around them. And I just laughed it off, like, ha, ha, ha. But the church that I was attached to at the time was a small church, right? And the young lady who was there, she was an intern for me. She was interning for me as a PDA, right? As an assistant. And I kid you not, I asked her to go talk to the pastor about something. And right before my eyes, I walked into the room and sat down. And right before my eyes, he was reading something with one hand, and he pushed his hand up under her skirt and slapped her on her butt. She was 18 years old. I was so shocked. I said, I can't believe you did that before me. I didn't know what to say. And he was like, I didn't do anything. Nothing happened. And he looked at her because she was compromised. You see what I mean? And the look on her face told me this was not the first time nor the second time that this had happened. So I asked her afterwards, I said, how long have you been coming to this church? And I said, why do I get the feeling this is not the first time that he has touched you inappropriately? He has probably done more stuff than you are willing to disclose at the moment. And she didn't answer. Right? And her not, because she didn't answer, right? Because she didn't answer, that told me exactly what I wanted to know, that it had happened more time than she was comfortable in disclosing, right? And I am saying all of that because somehow we've got to get to the stage where these things do happen. You know what I mean? We've got to get to the stage where stuff happens. I can't begin to tell you how many times that people have come forward and disclosed what have happened. I can't even talk about it because I could be saying things and people are watching and they're listening and it might be their story. But we have got to get to the stage where we need to have these kinds of conversations. We need to be aware. This is why they teach sexual harassment in workspaces. They're trying to reduce the number of incidents of this happening. It happens all the time, especially as we approach the party season. The office party season is coming. People just seem to think it's free reign after they've had a few jugs of eggnog that might be spiked with some rum or something, or whiskey, or whatever their drink of choice is. People now think it's free reign for them to go be grabby feely and touchy feely because you can wake up tomorrow and blame it on the liquor. And then the firm is going to get into the act and pay off everything so they don't get sued for sexual harassment because they were complicit in providing an environment that this happens. And I think if you're a guy and you don't want to have that around you, because it says a lot about your character, if you have to literally force yourself onto someone, then we all need to practice some safe approaches to engagement. If we're engaging with people whom we want to have sexual contact with, we need to have some safe approaches. And one of the safest things to do is to obtain consent. Do you want me to touch you? Not do you want to be touched? I mean, the wind touches you. You put your coat on. Do you want me to touch you? How can I touch you? Get it in writing. If I had a son today, I kid you not, I would be telling him, get a text message, dude. Text her. Have a screenshot. Keep that screenshot in your iCloud account forever and a day. So if anything ever happens, you can come forward and say something. Because I am beginning to think that for some of us as women, it's beginning to look like if you don't get what you want out of him, then all of a sudden it's rape. It's like this young woman at NBC. It's not that I don't believe her story, but I'm questioning her credibility because she insists that it was a transactional relationship. If it were a transactional relationship, what does that mean? Then are you screaming rape because you didn't get what you wanted? You wanted to be executive producer. He didn't swing the executive producer position to you. So now you're going to scream rape because she kept initiating and having sex with him afterwards. Who has sex with their oppressor willingly? No, that's not the Stockholm syndrome because he didn't keep her locked up. She's not siding with her attacker. No, that's not what that is. Do you see what I'm saying? So ladies, if you know that it wasn't rape, don't say it was to harm someone because what you're or cloud the issue because what you're doing is in fact making it worse for victims of rape to come forward. Right now, there are victims of rape. There are women who are being forced into sexual relationships that they do not want to be a willing participant of. They don't want to be in it, but they're forced into it. How can we get a truer picture if we continue to cloud the issue with, I changed my mind afterwards? No, while I'm in it, if I'm screaming and yelling and you are forcing me, you best believe right then and there, I'm calling the police right as it happens. And I'm going to tell everybody else so there are witnesses. Because if you start screaming and running and saying it was rape, guess what? People are going to do what? Somebody's going to call the cops to say something has happened, right? And it's not fun. And I know for some men, they just think women, they have money, they have power, so they don't get into trouble, things don't happen, whatever, right? And so they think they can get away with stuff like this. And that's just how that works. I think we need to come to the stage where we've got to have a better conversation surrounding these sexual interactions, right? Because it just can't be. What do you all think about that? I'm not hearing from anybody. You're all just listening. and nobody's saying anything. You don't want to comment because you work, you associate with other people, and anything that you say might be held against you. So you're leaving it up to me to say everything. Okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. But you want to know what other women think about it. Well, here's one thing that I am going to say. Here are a couple of things I'm going to say. If you are out, and whether you are out with a partner or you are out by yourself and there are women around, I think as a guy, you need to keep safe spaces. If you don't want to get into the position where anybody is going to say, well, he touched it, well, don't sit there alone with someone who is going to point a finger at you later. Make sure there's always a group of consent. If I had a son, that's what I would tell him. That's what I would tell my brothers, right? Make sure that you are surrounded by people all the time. So there's always a cloud of witnesses, right? So if you're out at a bar, there's a group of witnesses. You're not getting up to follow her when she goes to the bathroom. You guys love to do that. If she says she's leaving and she wants you to walk to the car, make sure there are other people who are doing the same thing walking to the car. Well, why don't we all just leave together? So nobody can say you hold them in a car park. I kid you not. If I had a son, I would go through it. The rate at which these things are happening today, and they're happening so frequently, and so many young women are coming forward and say, "Yeah, I was touched inappropriately and I didn't like it, but I didn't say anything about it because I didn't want to come forward." And then years later, it becomes a grand old thing. And they're looking at TV and say, "Yeah, wasn't that the guy who, when I was in college, touched me inappropriately?" And sometimes some of you men make decisions. My ex used to say, and I used to say this, that you make decisions with your body. You make decisions, your ego writes checks that your bodies can't cash. You make decisions that have implications for your future that you have no idea how far reaching these implications are. Do you remember the guy who was the lieutenant governor of Virginia, the black guy? So the white guy was embroiled in a scandal about blackface and him doing blackface while he was in college, the white man. The black guy was slated to take over the role of governor of Virginia. All of a sudden, out of left field somewhere, comes this rape allegation from when he was in college. It wasn't even proven to be true. They didn't try to prove that it was a credible story. But sucked to be him, just the allegation of rape was enough for people to say, "I don't want you near me. I don't want you to touch me." He lost all credibility. And some people are saying, "Well, that should not happen." Well, the truth be told, if you knew that you had such behavior, you should have thought about running for public office. You should have really sincerely thought about whether or not you needed to be in public spaces. Come on now. You knew this was hanging out there. It's not like it came out of left field from somewhere. Somebody at some time is going to say something wrong. Then you don't run for public office. Do you see what I'm saying? So did he think that he covered it enough? It's like the story with the Antonio Brown guy, the NFL player. His former personal trainer is accused him of sexually assaulting her. And the rest of us are like, seriously? You were so arrogant that you hired a female personal trainer. Okay. And you are a football player who makes a lot of money. And that was going to end well. Unbelievable. Who was his mentor? You want to ask, like, who mentored you? Who was your coach, your manager? Did they ever tell you that that was not good form, that that was not something you should do? Or were you just arrogant enough to think that, hey, man, I can just do whatever I want to do because it's transactional? She's my trainer, but yeah, I have sex with her occasionally, but that doesn't mean anything. Ha, 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 ha. Do you see what I'm saying? We need to, I kid you not, you're all listening to me like mind blowing. It's a different day, y'all. And it's a different age, right? And time is up, seriously. People are going to come out of the woodwork and they're going to start saying things. And you got to make sure that you don't put yourself in situations that will compromise you. You got to make sure of that because it's going to come out. So here's Antonio Brown. He has lost all his endorsements. He has lost all his contracts. He's now essentially broke. And, everybody, nobody's saying anything because the truth is, do we really know? Did he make her promises that he didn't keep? And so now it is her right to get back at him. That's his own comeuppance. That was his ego writing checks that his body can never cash. And so he has lost all his endorsements. So, do you still think we should not be having this conversation about what is appropriate sexual contact and what is not? That's what I am saying. We need to have the conversation with our sons, our nephews, our cousins, our brothers, our uncles. Yeah, because sometimes you go to family dinners and stuff, and Uncle so and so is kind of free willy with his hands. I kid you not, you're all looking at me like this stuff doesn't happen. It happens. You know that, right? Uncle Free, one of your girlfriends will tell you, Uncle Free Willy, your uncle is kind of touchy feely, isn't he? He just likes touching, touching, touching. Something like, hey, honey, come here. Always touching your chest. Are you feeling okay? Yes, my face is here. Don't look further. Right? Why are you trying to hug me? Or sometimes, like in the case of, I told you the story of my ex boyfriend's best friend. One of the things he liked to do was to always hug. Always hug. It was my ex-boyfriend who explained he wanted to feel your boobs. It didn't occur to me that that's what it was. It just made me feel, I know your wife, we're friends, kind of thing, right? So there are some, we need to talk about what is appropriate sexual contact with people whom you are not intimate with. We need to observe those. We need to don't touch people uninvited. Let them tell you they want you to touch them, right? Obtain their consent and say, would you send that to me in a text? I bet if you guys start saying send it to me in a text, it's going to change things. Ladies, don't put yourselves in compromising positions. If he makes you feel uncomfortable, get out of the room and tell others, right? If you're hanging with some guy and he's making you feel uncomfortable, he has friends who kind of lowball you and they look at you funny. Tell your guy, right? That's your best defense. And sometimes guys will be like, he all right, he's cool. I've known him forever. That's what my ex-husband said. I've known him forever. He would never do anything. Really? That's not how I felt when I was coming down the stairs, though. Right? That didn't end well. That one did not end well. Right? I got blamed for their friendship being broken, but I was like, he touched me. I didn't tell him I wanted him to touch me. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? Right? So we need to have this conversation. And what do you guys talk about when you're among one another? I mean, do you tell each other that my girl is my girl and she's not your girl? My girl is my girl. Don't touch her no matter how you feel that you think she's attractive. Because I know when you guys get together, you like to talk about your girl and how your girl is this and your girl is that. And it's a guy thing. Yeah, it's a guy thing. And you talk about that. Yeah, but this is your girl, right? She's not everyone's girl. She doesn't want to be everyone's girl. She wants to be your girl. So treat her like that. Put up a fence around her so people know it's not okay to brush past her. One of the ways that they initiate contact is they like to brush up against you and then say, oh, I'm sorry. Like they always make sure they're in an enclosed space. So when you're coming out of a room or going into passing a doorway or something, that you have no choice but to brush up against them. Then they're like, that was just, that was no big deal, and that was nothing. And that's never just something that just happens. That was by design, right? True confessions. I hope my ex-boyfriend is not listening because he's going to remember this. And I don't think he remembered it. And in this story, I told you about how my ex-boyfriend's best friend pushed me on the car and kissed me and tried to, all over. Do you know It took him 20 years to apologize. It was but maybe 8 or 9 years ago, he reached out to me on Facebook and apologized. I kid you not. I don't remember what I said. If I don't even remember what I said. But the fact that he even remembers it was enough. Because at that point, I think I had chosen to forget it. Yes, you are hearing this because it does happen, right? And we're talking about it because, as much as it is a difficult conversation for one to have, it still is a conversation that needs to happen. I don't like talking about it. I'm professional, so I'm presenting a professional demeanor. But that doesn't mean that I'm happy to talk about it. It doesn't mean that I'm happy to relate to you events that are so personal that happened years ago, but I still remember it as if it happened yesterday. I don't feel good about it. But this is the mindset of what happens to women who have been sexually assaulted. We don't forget. It happened to our bodies. There's a thing called muscle memory. Anybody ever heard of that? You've heard of muscle memory? It's what scientists say happened to us when it's like they say, getting back on a bike, you have muscle memory. As soon as your muscles remember, the memory is ignited, and so your muscles fall into place on how to ride a bike, right? Well, guess what? We have muscle memory when it comes to sexual assault. Your body does not forget. Let me help you to put that into perspective. In When my marriage was ending, I endured a very harsh marriage. I didn't want to be a single parent, and I didn't want to be a statistic. I didn't want to get divorced and be single with children. And when my marriage was ending, my ex-husband was physically and verbally abusive, and it affected me. And I didn't realize how much it affected me. I worked in a call center in Florida, and a black man was trying to walk towards me one day in the break room. Believe it or not, I backed up. I backed up. And he said, "Oh my God, that tells me exactly what is happening at home." And he said, "Lady, I'm not the one. I just wanted to come and tell you that it's okay because I could see that it's not okay." And I couldn't talk. I froze up. You know what that was? Trauma. The trauma that I was living produced a muscle memory that told my brain and told my eyes that when you see someone who looks like what my ex husband looks like, back up. That's what happens to victims of sexual assault. So, if someone is trying to kiss you and force their way on you, you will never forget what it felt like. Maybe that's what happened to this young woman at NBC. Maybe she tried having anal sex and she can't get past it because the muscle memory comes back. I don't know. But what I do know is we got to start having this conversation around sexual assault and what is consent, what is implied consent, what is people just getting together. Is it free, or is it going to come back and bite all of us later? Am I going to feel good about this interaction afterwards, or am I going to regret this afterwards? We need to have these things underscored. It makes a good case for marriage, doesn't it? Makes an excellent case for being in committed relationships. Because now then, all your physical and emotional desires are going to be satisfied by one person. And you're not going to have to worry about whether or not somebody else is going to come and accuse you of this. And it helps us women that even though we might be married, because I had a ring on my finger too, I am not free for all your friends to come and touchy feely. This happens more than you know. We need to have this conversation. Are you going to help me have this conversation? Are you going to initiate this conversation right now? If you're at work or you're a woman, I want you to pick up your phone when I'm done and text your girlfriend, your wife, your ex-girlfriend, your ex-wife, your niece, your daughter, your sister, every woman you know, your mother, your auntie, your cousins, your female cousins. I want you to text them and ask them. Just answer this question. It's me asking. Has anybody ever assaulted you sexually? Have you ever been touched by anyone that you weren't comfortable with, who made you uncomfortable? And just watch the responses that you will get. It's going to affect you. And then you will know, wow, let me help you. Let me talk to you. Come here. Let me just hug you. You're my niece. Let me tell you it's okay. Do you see what I'm saying? Because the conversation around this is never going to end. We got to do something about this, right? It's mind blowing, isn't it? So, in this story, we started talking about this man who was the groom, and he raped the bridesmaid the night before the wedding. Now, some months later, 6, 7 months later now, that's happened in March in Pennsylvania, he's facing charges. Should he? He took advantage of her. According to him, he was drunk. That does not excuse your behavior. It's like the person who is drunk, driving while drunk and hits someone. That doesn't excuse your behavior. But as a society, our culture says he was just having a good time. And just because he was having a good time, that gave him license to go and have his way with someone. Nah, we got to eliminate that. So, ladies, be careful. Don't get so drunk that you don't know where you are. And guys, come on. Come on. Help us. Keep us safe. I want to know that I'm safe when I'm around you. I want to feel safe. I want to know that your friends are not going to be touchy feely around me, or your brothers, or your cousins, your uncles, your dad. Do you know that happens too? A girl is dating a guy, and suddenly even his dad feels like he should grab and touch and pass innuendos about her body. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Wow, it's been a heavy morning. So before I go, we're gonna have some self-care, right? You're all gonna go get some chocolate, buy some Hershey's or Dove chocolate or something. Eat something, go make some comfort food, talk to a baby. Go talk to a baby. If you know somebody who has a baby, right? Go hold a baby. It's comfort food. It's comforting, right? Makes you feel like the world is a pure, soft place again, right? My name is Harriet Kimmick. Go to my website, harrietkimmick.com or the exodusfoundation.com. Thank you so much for your support. Continue to buy our books on amazon.com. I really appreciate your support, and continue to be a blessing to us. Next week, I think it's next Wednesday, we'll be in Lansing, Michigan. Anybody out there from Lansing? We'll be in Lansing, Michigan, talking about the intersection of human trafficking and immigration, as usual. Make sure you come on out and join us. We'll be there. And continue to be a blessing to us by your faithful listenership. Make sure you download Spotify and subscribe. Come on, Spotify, subscribe to Down to Earth with Harriet Kimmick, as well as continue to listen to me on your favorite podcast station. So the conversation we had yesterday, if you didn't join us, it's now uploaded. It's now on Spotify and everywhere your favorite podcast is. Thank you so much for listening. It's Thursday. Go out and live gloriously. Get some cider and donuts. That's a good thing. I'm about to do that. Get some cider and donuts, right? That's going to rock. And let's enjoy fall season, right? Thanks, everybody. Be blessed. See you tomorrow.